How much responsibility do you feel that you have, particularly to go out to the alt-right, who, as you say, some of them have enjoyed your work, and say,
No,
I'm not one of you guys, I'm not with you guys.
They haven't enjoyed my work.
I've definitely read bits on the internet.
Read more.
You've sold 2 million copies of 12 Rules for Life. You have 800,000 followers on Twitter, 1.4 million followers on YouTube. What is it that you're selling that so many people want to buy?
I don't think I'm selling anything.
Well, I went to a show where you were selling tickets to your show, so people are willing to pay a lot of money to see you speak.
So,
Well, one of the things I want to come back to is this idea, so that you say in the book, there is masculine order and feminine chaos.
no, actually I say that those are symbolic representations of the two things.
Right, okay, so why is order masculine?
I think it's because our primary social hierarchy structures are fundamentally masculine.
And that's not the patriarchy?
Well, it's not the modern idea of the patriarchy, that's for sure.
I mean, that's my idea of the patriarchy, which is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper-successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
But I could say equally well that most rape victims are women. Terrible things happen to people of both sexes.
And you could say that with perfect utility, but that doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of a male-dominated patriarchy. Well, it just means that terrible things happen to both genders, which they certainly do.
But there are almost no women who rape men, for example. So that is an asymmetry there in sexual violence.
Well, yes, there's an asymmetry in all sorts of places, but that doesn't mean that Western culture is a male-dominated patriarchy. The fact that there are asymmetries has nothing to do with your basic argument.
Well, saying that it's the least tyrannical society is not the same as saying it's not a tyrannical society.
That's exactly why I said it was the least tyrannical
But that's
society.
what I mean. So you haven't debunked the existence of patriarchy then. You've said that actually now is better for women.
I don't have to debunk it. You have to demonstrate its existence.
Okay, well, let's go through it. I'm writing a book about feminism at the moment. Until 1919, there were professions that women were barred from. They simply were not allowed to do it. Until 1880s...
Why would you blame men for that?
Because who was in those professions, who was guarding entry to those professions, who was worried about losing their status if women became doctors?
What do you think it was that emancipated women in the 20th century, just out of curiosity?
Well, a couple of different things. I think it was technology. I think it was the pill helped enormously because
so
it gave
when was that developed?
Well, in the 60s.
Right, so that wasn't 1919.
No. Your conception of patriarchy, as I see it in the book, is that quite a lot of men are quite nice and they do nice things for women. And
no, that's not my conception of patriarchy. So, like, this whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no,
You know,
I don't.
men
I
and
really don't.
women-
Go on.
It's an absolutely dreadful misreading of history. It's a terrible thing to teach young women, and it's a horrible thing to inflict upon men.
Right.
We live in the best society that's ever been created. You know, I was reading about some Indonesians.
Hang on a minute, do you mean me as a woman or me as a
I mean
21st
us.
century person in the world?
I mean us, yeah.
I mean, I'm
You,
incredibly grateful for what I have, but to me the
Then how
project
is
of
it a
politics is...
construction of a tyrannical patriarchy? You're grateful for the productions of a tyrannical patriarchy. How does that make sense?
Because I think life is good, I think it could be better. That's what
That's
being a
fine.
progressive
That's a perfectly
means.
reasonable proposition.
But I guess
But that isn't commensurate with your claim that you're the beneficiary of a tyrannical patriarchy.
Why not?
How can it be good if it's the consequence of a tyrannical patriarchy? Tyranny isn't good, is it? I mean, that's the definition of tyranny. Something that isn't good, and yet it's produced all these things that you're grateful for. Like, doesn't that contradiction bother you? Where did what was good come from?
Well, I think I'm benefiting actually from a lot of things that I don't support, that are unearned privileges in my life. I think that's absolutely true.
Like your job?
Like I have a very good job. I had a loving family.
Quit.
Well, I don't think that's going to do the world any good, is it?
That's a hell of a fine rationalization for your privileged position. All.
Why
It
is
has
saying
its
that something
corrupt
has elements of this made
That
the
isn't
same
what's
as it
being
is
said.
purely that?
That isn't what's being said.
Multiculturalism is a scourge that is sweeping Canada. And what I got was a strong
No,
sense...
that has swept Canada.
Okay. Well, what I got was a very strong sense of people whose
I
lives...
never said that it was a scourge that swept Canada. I actually didn't say that the patriarchy had been eroded.
Quite annoying, which I think is probably something I
It's
agree
not,
with
they're
you
not
on.
just annoying. Like, they're destroying the universities, and that's not a good thing. And they're particularly destroying the social sciences and the humanities.
Next year I'm going to be a fellow at Oxford University, so I spend time talking to academics. I've talked to a lot of academics for my book. I do agree with you, there is an illiberal strain that is sweeping through a lot of universities. Because it's called an antidote to chaos. Why isn't it an antidote to order, which you also say in its excessive manifestations is bad?
I've said that. Well, you can't write a book about everything.
No, but you've specifically chosen antidote to chaos. So
but
why
I
is
also
chaos
have
the big...
300 lectures online, and I talk plenty about the pathology of order in those lectures.
Okay, but
So
I'm just
I'm
saying...
no fan of authoritarian strongmen, that's for sure.
Well, that's good, but I do think that the way that you talk about order in the book is something that people will take away from it.
Be specific.
Okay, so let me think. The way that you talk about natural dominance hierarchies in lobsters. Let's get on to the lobsters.
There's not one line in that entire book that claims that, because it's not what I believe. But it has absolutely nothing to do with what I wrote, or what I've said, or what I believe. So
I agree that I'm married. Modern marriage has a lot to recommend it. I do also think it is a patriarchal institution. It is literally...
Of course you think that,
well,
because you think virtually everything that occurs in our society is a patriarchal institution. And it's easy to think that, because then you only have to think one thing.
You could
have a one-thing answer for everything.
You could let
it's
me...
It's part of the patriarchal institution.
I don't think you're obeying the rule that says maybe treat people as if they have something worth hearing. So
I'm not making a case for the patriarchal tyranny. And I don't think you are either. I think that you're making a case that's like a universally cliched case for the patriarchal tyranny.
So there is no evidence. Maybe there will be some found, but at the moment there is no evidence that there is any problem with having gay parents.
I never said there was.